Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video, I promised I would do this video. We are going to be talking about the difficulty of recent content in Raid Shadow Legends and whether or not it is too hard. Specifically, we're going to talk about the event dungeon, and we're going to talk about Faction Wars hard mode. I'm going to be presenting cases both for and against. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, and I'll sort of break down my actual thoughts on it. So without any further ado, I mean, let's just dive in, right? Let's start breaking it down. We'll leave some stuff in the background. I will say, by the way, I don't know if this team is 100% successful. I had to improve the gear on Geomancer because it wasn't good enough. We'll talk about that, obviously, as a reason why stuff is too hard. But let's go. So number one, what is not too hard? I think one of the very common things you see, I think a large minority of players, I do see saying this sort of thing, which is I've been I've been playing for 2 years and I can't beat everything, therefore it is too hard. And I don't agree with that. And there's lots of different variations of this. I mean, I've been playing a game called Etheria Restart, which is like an anime gacha, but it's very like Raid. It's very, very difficult. But to give you an example from another game so you don't feel like personally attacked or anything, right? In that game, I literally saw this massive post like on Reddit and tons of posts like this. All the game's too hard, the game's too hard. But this massive post, which basically was saying, I cannot beat all the end game content in the second week of playing the game with, to put it in raid terms, 5-star unbooked epics. The game is too hard. And it's like, wait, at that point, what's the point in there even being a game? You know, you can't, which, to be fair, it's probably what some players do want, is just a shiny win button, right? Just press the button, see shiny things pop out. It's not a surprise that, you know, a lot of players like that. That's exactly what this game wants. They're gamblers effectively as well. Just keep pulling the lever and shiny things pop out and you feel good. But yeah, that's a particular take on it. That's not one that I personally agree with. Yeah, I prefer to have a bit of a challenge in the game and for you to actually require, you know, some thought into it. But for this one specifically, here's the problem with the time more than anything. And this is something I think is really important to understand, is that I think there is a place for difficult content in the game, for very difficult content even in the game, because the game is almost 6 years old at this point, and there needs to be content for longer-term players, for long-term players, right? Like, let's say we come in and we say, okay, all the content in the game will be beatable by an average 2-year player. From now on, for forevermore, every bit of content for the future of Raid will be beaten by players been playing for 2 years or more. Well, there's players been playing for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 almost years at this point. And then obviously anyone playing now within a couple of years will start bypassing it. And then if everything is just going to fall over without needing any effort whatsoever, I think that's going to make people just quit the game, honestly. I think that's actually really bad for the game. Raid is it's always been a very difficult game, actually. So yeah, that to me is a big problem. So I think that there is a place. I think that these contents are too difficult. I do. And we're going to break down why, because we're starting with the not too hard section, but we're going to dive into the too hard section in a second. But that being said, I do think that there is a place in the game for very difficult content. Let's stick some Faction Wars hard in the background. So I have no idea if this team is going to work. we're trying to set up some auto stuff. Let's see, this is most likely going to fail. Let's find out. I haven't set up a preset, so it's definitely going to fail. But yeah. So there we go. I think that there is a place for difficult content, and the reality is if they make content for players who've been playing for 5 or 6 years, most players are not going to be able to do it, but there's still a need for that content in the game, which is difficult. It's just a problem with the game getting older and the game being effectively progressive, right? That the longer you play, the stronger you get. It's just a problem. Catch-up mechanics become important if they're going to make this more difficult content. So you can clear through the older stuff faster, and that newer players can clear the stuff. And they've not been very good, let's be honest, to catch-up mechanics. Now, let's dive into stuff that is too hard. What makes content Too hard. The number one thing for me, and this is the most damning bit of feedback that I've seen on I'm not sure where to put, I'll just put this here. The most damning bit of feedback I've seen on Faction Wars Hard and the event dungeon, number one, is that it is not fun. If content, you can have very challenging content, very difficult stuff that is beatable, but if it's not fun to beat it, and we're going to break down some examples of what makes it not fun, then that is no good, no bueno. It doesn't work, right? It must be fun. That's this is a game, right? It must be enjoyable. If it's not, oh yeah, we are super dead. It's not good. I think another thing, it's too hard if it cannot be done free to play. Again, we're not saying, because this is something that I constantly get comments on. People say, well, if it's, it's not free to play friendly because I've been playing for 3 months and I can't beat the game. No, that's not what it means. But, if there's content that you just can't do free to play, like a free to play long-term player, like if we're aiming for content for 5 to 6, let's say 4 to 6 year players of the game, if it can't be done by a 4 to 6 year free to play player, then there's no point. Let's try an easier stage, see if we can actually do it. Again, I haven't set up a preset, so probably it's going to absolutely fail. So, some examples. If it cannot be done free to play. So I think the event dungeon is a really good example. Like, I'm running a +4 6-star Geomancer. I only have a +12 relic, but ideally you want a plus 15 relic. And then you need multiple champions in your team to be built in that way and to be ready to go in that way. And that's crazy. That's way too much. That's just on another level of absurd. That's just no good. The level of gear that you require and the souls, the relics, all of that, I just don't think that's very accessible at all to free-to-play players. And the same thing applies as well to Faction Wars Hard. But yeah, if you require way too much stuff to do it, that's no good. Another thing, and this ties also into the not fun, if it relies on huge randomness, RNG. I think a couple of good examples of this, 2 really good examples. For example, the purple boss in Faction Wars Hard. It's actually bad for more reasons than this. In fact, if we speak about the bosses in particular, I would say the yellow boss and the green boss actually are probably too easy. I think the blue and the red boss are very tough, but probably a good level of challenging. Like, they're very difficult, but at least there's strategies you can use. Maybe they're slightly too hard, but at least there's strategies you can use. Whereas I think that the yellow boss is very easy, like stupidly easy. The purple boss is definitely way too hard. I think that the purple boss on stage 14 is significantly, rip Carnage, significantly more difficult than the yellow boss on stage 21. Like, if you can beat the purple boss, there's a couple of factions, you beat the purple boss on stage 14 and it's an absolute nightmare, and then the stage 21 boss falls over, it's the yellow boss. You're kind of like, what's going on here? That's not good balancing. But the purple boss, the randomness of him flipping buffs and debuffs, the randomness of whether he places block active skills and fears, it's just a pain in the ass, frankly. It's just really annoying. It's just a very unfun boss that's, yeah, you're like, oh, will my protection sets work? Have I even got protection sets to drop for this faction? Will my debuffs flip over or not? And that completely changed the run. And you just have to run it over and over again, and that's not fun. Stun sets is another really good example where stun sets have been a symptom of a problem for a long time, for years in Raid. And the developers have even acknowledged it, but they have not done anything to fix it. In fact, they've just done it again in Faction Wars Hard. So Cursed City, this is a huge problem. We said to the developers when Cursed City first came out, or like maybe it was a few months, maybe it was 6 months after Cursed City first came out, hey guys, a lot of the stages in Cursed City are so difficult that the only way to get through is to slap stun sets or provoke sets onto basically all of your characters and run the stage over and over and over again until you get good luck and you land stun sets on enough enemies to get away with it and you clear through the stage. And there's no other way to do it. And the developers said, you know what they said? They said, yes, you're absolutely right. It is really shitty. But guess what? They've also, or guess what? That's what they said. But what have they done about it? Nothing. They never changed Curse City. I mean, they made it easier by the area bonuses and by relics. Definitely nerfs it somewhat, but still, they never fundamentally changed it. And then we've got Faction Wars Hard, which is sort of the same thing all over again. It's incredibly reliant on sets, gear set, not just stun sets and provoke sets, but freeze sets, potentially some counterattack sets, cooldown reduction sets are essential as well to really complete. Like, a lot of the conditions are nothing to do with the champions. It's about using sets and masteries. Masteries for the extending buffs and debuffs. And then sets for cooldown reduction. That's basically how you do it. You need to stack a bunch of reflex or merciless sets. For the stun stages, you can use some stun champions, but often it's 2 or 3 stun sets. Or same with provoke, blah blah blah. Same with freeze. You can use the champions, but the sets are more of it. And that is a huge problem because it's just run it over and over and over again until that low chance to trigger procs multiple times. And that's number one, it's not fun. And number two, it's just a shitty way of difficulty. I think a huge problem as well for things being too hard is if there's no clear path to progress, right? If you're sitting there going, I don't know what I can do to beat Faction Wars Hard. Let's say you're on Faction Wars Hard and you go, I don't know what I can do, or even worse, there's nothing I can do. And to be fair, I do think players can sometimes be too pessimistic. So for example, to go back to the Etheria restart example, you probably haven't played the game, so you're not too interested, but just in short, huge outcry from players saying you need a specific character to clear all these dungeons. Thousands of posts, just Reddit overflowing with complaints. And then I'm like, a couple of days later, I see like a video from a guy called CWC Zeppelin. If you play the game and you want to check it out, but like, here's me beating a bunch of content with none of those characters that people say are necessary. Completely different team. And it's like, yeah, the complaints, people get, I think, too tempted into complaining. But yeah, I do think that this can be a problem, and it is a real problem for lots of different places where there's no clear path to progress. I think one good example is when you require big souls on champions. Like, what can you do? It takes literal months to save up to buy a soul for one champion, and then you're just pulling soul stones, which is entirely random, and you don't get that many. So yeah, you might be sat there going, gosh, I really need souls on a bunch of champions for Faction Wars Hard. There's really nothing I can do. I just pull on I'll save my souls, I'll pull on 2x events, I'll put them in the wish list, but it is entirely down to randomness. I could be sat here in 7 or 8 months and be no better off. I might simply not have pulled souls for that champion. I might be able to buy soul for one single champion out of the dozens I might need. It's just, there's no path to progress there, which is a huge problem. I will say with Faction Wars Hard as well, not the event dungeon, because that's going away in a few weeks, but with Faction Wars Hard, by the way, it doesn't look like I can be, this is going to be a big problem setting up an auto for this. Ooh, Orcs even worse. I don't think I even have gear on these guys. Let's slap it on for fun. But yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, but for the event dungeon's going away, so there's definitely no clear path to progress. It's going to be gone. For Faction Wars Hard, one thing somewhat in its favor is that you will get more over the next few months. You'll definitely get more relics. There will probably be a couple of fusions that will be, we are very dead. A couple of fusions that will be very helpful for beating Faction Wars. So at least there's that. Like, there definitely will be stuff over the next while that will help you progress. There'll probably be a big content drop in 6 months for the end of the year. I don't know what that big content drop is going to be. As far as I know, we've got no hints whatsoever as to what that might be. But presumably, they always drop something big at the end of the year that will give you a bunch of rewards and power that will probably, again, help you progress through the content. So there is some stuff coming in the future, at least for Faction Wars Hard. But again, the event dungeon is gone in a few months. Like, if you're like one, for example, with the event dungeon, yeah, we're missing a bunch of gear. You can use, does it even show up in the teams of the week? No, hang on, let me get this up. Okay, here we go. I found it on the optimizer, so here we go. But you can use 100%. You can use Euros the Soul Cage, which is sick, and you can beat the boss with him. But guess what? You really need a big soul on Euros. Euros, he's a free champion. Everyone can get him. But you obviously need crazy gear. You can see in this case, he's got multiple sets of Defiant. Same thing on Geomancer. That's a pay-to-win set. You cannot get that for free, which to my mind is also, by the way, a bad thing in the game. There shouldn't be exclusive paid sets. I'm fine with the Forge Pass, but there should be events. It's a whole other topic, but the events in this game should be much more rewarding. And they've done it a couple of times running Decks of Fate, that you can get some of this limited Forge Pass gear. But number one, they have been extremely expensive. And number two, extremely rare and scarce. This stuff should be much more plentiful. But yeah, you basically need a big soul on Eurost. If you don't have a soul for Eurost, you basically can't run this team. It just doesn't work. He'll just die, and he won't have the Brimstone to kill the boss. So forget about it. And again, within the space of the event dungeon, can you get a soul for Eurost? No, you basically can't. So forget about it. So it just doesn't work. That's a really, really big problem. Let's run some more event dungeons, seeing as my faction war teams are definitely not going to work. Yeah, Soul's taking... So, big problems. If I say big problems in terms of difficulty, yeah. Here's another big problem. I haven't talked about this, but I think with faction wars, it's interesting. I've almost fully... Well, we'll go back to it in a second. I'm jumping all over the place. I've actually almost fully cleared faction wars. Is that appropriately hard? So I've been playing the game for about 4 years, but I've been receiving content creator perks, which is basically a massive chunk of energy and books and chickens every week. I've been getting that for over 2 years. That's pushes an account much, much further than a typical free-to-play. I've also spent money on gem passes and forge passes, which is gear. Like, I've used bolster set extensively in Faction Wars Hard. It's one of my most commonly used thing. You just can't get that if you're free to play. And I've bought a bunch of primals. A couple of the mythicals have been very instrumental, huge to actually clearing through. A couple of them not too important, and honestly, the free ones are probably the best. But again, that's an advantage that players would not have. But I think, for me, as like a 4-year player, considering those advantages, let's say, rough rule of thumb, just roughly, let's say I'm 50% stronger than a typical player. So about 6-year player. It's not massively far off on Faction Wars Hard then. If the game is almost 6 years old, and a 6-year, very also to mention, I'm very hardcore. I play this game like a lot. Surprise. A very hardcore free-to-play player in about 6 years maybe could beat Faction Wars Hard. That is too hard. I think that's actually too hard. That is like at the very limit of acceptable, and like I think that's too far. I think you want to go to the limit of acceptable, and then you want to tone it down maybe 20% or something, because number one, that's like playing I think that is too long. It shouldn't be 6 years if the game is 6 years old. I think, content for long-term players, it would be better to target like a 4-year fairly hardcore free-to-play player. And I think a 4-year fairly hardcore free-to-play player wouldn't be able to do this. In fact, this reminds me very much of a great comment from Modustrial here. I talked about this in this video. This is a comment from Ash's video. But here we go. He's an endgame low-spend player who's been playing for 5 years, right? And yeah, he's finding a lot of stuff too difficult as well. So I think it's a great comment, goes into it in depth, and there was lots of other great comments I went through in depth there as well. But yeah, I think that's a great example. So yeah, I mean, if we look at my Faction Wars progress, we're still working on stuff. Like, I have fully cleared a few crypts. I'm missing a few stars in dwarves. We're missing a few stars, as you can see in orcs. It's a big struggle. So yeah, I think it's not massively far off. Like, here's me. I am actually clearing this stuff. But for me, mostly clearing this stuff, but finding it massively difficult, I actually think that that's a little bit too hard for where we are in the game. When I consider the power of my account and how hardcore I am in this game and being a content creator, if it's this hard, I think it is too hard. Like I said, not massively, but it is definitely too hard. That's my take on it. But to speak about this, I think one really big problem with Faction Wars is the pressure that it creates on people to clear it immediately. And I don't think that this is Right. This is both a player created problem, but also a developer created problem. So I think for the player created side of it, this is a problem that we create for ourselves, which is going, well, I mean, if I do not 3-star every stage, like let's say, I don't know, whatever, Skinwalkers opens up in 4 days, right, for the final stages. If I do not 3-star every stage, basically immediately, I get really upset. It's too hard. I think that's a player created problem. I think that's sort of in your head. Like it's, you don't need to clear the stuff 3 stars immediately within a few attempts as soon as it comes out. This is also a developer created problem though, because that is clearly how a lot of players feel about it. There is massive pressure to fully clear this content relatively quickly as soon as it comes out. And if we don't, then we feel really bad about it. But the developers have created that problem. So that's something for them to consider in terms of how they present this content or how the content unlocks or something like that. Like, for example, you could perhaps have, the content all be open, but maybe the rewards for clearing it open more slowly or something, just as an example. So it's like, yeah, you can clear it, but you don't have anywhere near as much of a rush. But like, again, like you don't need to rush to Polara. Like, what happens if you rush and you get Polara as soon as possible? Like, you got Polara, but it's not a huge deal, really. So yeah, I think this is both a player created problem, but also a developer created problem in terms of like, again, they could maybe release fewer stages of Faction Wars Hard. Like they could have it roll out more slowly. There's lots of potential things they could have done. Yeah, I think there is an expectation, a false expectation that all of this stuff should be completable immediately. And you get angry and mad when you don't complete it immediately. And I don't think that's accurate. But I think the developers, by how it unlocks and how they presented it, have also created that FOMO. And I mean, it's probably a core tactic to them to sell more stuff, but it is very negative in terms of a player experience. And yeah, I think it just creates pressure to clear. I think similarly for the event dungeon, like I said, I think this event dungeon has clearly been too difficult. But again, I've seen a lot of comments from players being like, I can only clear up to stage 20, therefore it is too difficult. And again, going back to my original point, no, it's probably not actually too difficult because of that. Like if you can only clear to stage 20, but I mean, you're not like an end game player. I mean, and there's also big spenders in the game as well that need at least somewhat of a challenge. But like I said, I don't think that's a big priority. I think they should just sort of smash the content, honestly. I'm like, bummer if you spent so much money that there's no content. It's sort of you dug your own grave. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a huge problem. Now, again, if you've been saying I've been playing hardcore for 5 years and I'm good at the game and I can't get past stage 20, that's bad. But I think this is part of the structure and how players interpret it. That they go, a player looks at it, goes, I'm only stage 20 out of 30. I can't clear it, therefore it sucks. That is, again, a problem in players' heads. But it's also partly to do with how this is structured. So I think one thing you could do, for example, you could have split this into like normal and hard difficulties, or like normal and nightmare, and have, because one thing that they have done well to their credit is like farming stage 20 is actually really good, right? Lower energy cost, you get much more quantity of stuff. The quality is lower, but it works pretty well. I think that's fine. But yeah, if you separate them into different difficulties, and then maybe add some interesting modifiers or stuff. So it's like, yeah, there's really difficult content, but make it clear that it's more optional and there's not crazy rewards tied into it. So yeah, players can go, well, hey, listen, I fully cleared normal difficulty. That's pretty sick. I feel really good about that. It's a milestone. And then, yeah, there's this hard difficulty. Oh, but that's for like the end game dudes and the super krakens. I think just, it's a little bit pandering, I will be honest, but that might be good for players and just you don't have to, because there's legitimate complaints about this content. There's legitimate stuff that's too difficult, but you do have to read through, I'm afraid to say, a lot of stuff about people complaining that they can't beat the stuff when they really shouldn't be able to beat the stuff. And it's just, it gets in the way of actually improving things. So maybe that would help just a bit in terms of, I don't know, maybe. Another huge problem, the cost of swapping gear. This is very much more so for Faction Wars. But you need to, to actually progress through and to test stuff, you need to be able to swap around gear. Like, oh, how did these different champions work? Let me swap my gear. Let me do this stuff. And the fact that it's so expensive in terms of silver to swap gear, the game is just so much better when there's permanent free gear removal, I'm afraid to say. We're going to be getting, I think in the next patch, they've said the 1 hour gear swap per day, I think is coming in the next patch. But again, that's just creating, I think the structures just create, the structure creates pressure. It's like, oh, I've got my 1 hour to, I have to do all this within the 1 hour. And if I take a break for 5 minutes to go grab a coffee, or, hey, my kid comes into the room and needs help with their homework or something, like, oh, I'm stressed out because now I'm missing my opportunity. And oh shit, we've got like only a few hours left on this timer. And oh, my free gear removal timer's ticking down. It's like, this is just too much negative pressure. That's not good. So yeah, like, again, I am very much in favor. I'm a huge advocate for just permanent gear removal, permanent free gear removal in the game, so that you can come in and just be like, you know what, whenever I want, I can just swap my gear around and I can experiment with stuff. And this is true for Cursed City as well, for all the content in the game. When you can freely experiment and test things and build teams, it's a lot more fun instead of being pressured for like, gosh, if I spend a few million silver, I'm jeopardizing, future events for the game. Like, that's just stupid. It's just no good. And yeah, it's amazing how much more enjoyable I found Faction Wars hard when there's a free gear removal event. And yeah, it's just shitty without that. I've ranted about this as well. Awakened weakness. So this is for bosses. This is a huge problem that and this is true of hard mode bosses as well. This is also in the event dungeon, that you take less damage per awakening level and you deal more damage per awakening level. You take up to 25% less, which is way more than it sounds, and then you deal up to 50% more damage, which is probably about as strong as it sounds. But yeah, this is crazy. And again, ties back into the no clear path to progress, that souls are just so stingy. It takes literal months to save up. Again, it takes about 6 months, let's say roughly, to buy the souls for a champion. If you have to do that for 5 champions in a faction, if you have to buy the souls, let's round it down to 2 years to get enough for a faction. There's 15 factions, that's 30 years. That's almost as long as I've been alive. 30 years. That's crazy. Yeah, that's just stupid. This awakened weakness really doesn't need to be there. Because you can be like, oh, well, shit, I just can't use this champion. I don't have a soul for this champion. I just can't use them. I've had to say that multiple times about multiple champions. Quintus, perfect example. I'm like, man, I'd love to use Quintus. Can't use him. Doesn't have a soul. He's just going to get wrecked. And there's nothing I can do about it. Like, well, again, I can slap him into the wish list and say for 2x events. And yeah, I mean, I could be here 1 year later and be like, shit, Quintus is only like a 3-star soul. Or maybe I can get him to a 4-star if I pour all of my gray essence into him over the next few months. Like, yeah, then that's still a problem for multiple other factions where we've got the same problem. This awakened weakness sucks. This shouldn't be in the game. It doesn't need to be in the game. Souls are already really powerful on their own. This does not need to be here. And yeah, this relies on randomness and there's no clear path to progress. It's a really big problem. A bigger, broader problem, a scarcity of free-to-play primals. Mythicals are obviously massive for clearing through this content and gives you a huge power boost. It's fun. But primals are basically designed that you effectively, you get 1 mythical every 2 years if you're free-to-play or something. Like, that's crazy. Yeah, there's just not enough free-to-play primals. Simple as. And yeah, that's I think that's all I've got for this video, but it's a lot. So yeah, broadly speaking, overall, I do think it's important. I think that, there needs to be content for long-term. That's important. There needs to be content for long players. That's fine. And I think Faction Wars hard mode, I think it's fine if it's really difficult. I actually don't have a problem with that. And I do think that there is a significant amount of complaints, which is basically people just want to win, and they don't want any challenge. And for me, that is a way. That is certainly a viable way to design games. And there's plenty of games that do that. And, I think it's also viable if you say, I want Raid to be like that. I want like this cool, dark fantasy role-playing game. That's, but it's not really hard. I just play it and it's cool. That's fair. But for me personally, I don't agree with that. And I think that doesn't fit with how the game has been for years. So I think it would be a disservice to make. So I think that having difficult content for long-term players is good. But that being said, there are multiple things they're doing that make it too difficult. Number one, stuff that's not fun to do. Yeah, if it requires spending to feel like you can progress, if there's huge amounts of randomness, both in the enemy design and also in the solutions, both of these, and there's multiple other examples. If there's no clear path to progress in it, apart from, again, just waiting for random stuff to finally pull a champion that lets you go, finally get a soul that lets you go. Again, that's not good. It's a core, getting champions and souls over time is a core part of the game. But if there's no way to also progress in general, that's bad. Then, like I said, there's big problems. What I would do immediately, right? Short-term solutions for this. Personally, I would just delete Awaken Weakness from the game. I'd put in permanent free gear removal, and I would turn the free gear removal tokens into like double silver drops, or like bonus XP, like whatever, like activate a Forge Pass type bonus, more XP, more silver for a short amount of time. I would increase the amount of primals that people get from free sources, and I guess that's a bigger change to work in, but like those are two very quick changes that I think would make stuff much better. It's too late, obviously, to change this stuff, but in the future, that's something the developers should really consider. How much FOMO are their game modes creating? Because I think there is a character flaw with many of us that we want to. You've seen how much I've raged. Like this is something I am very much guilty of as well. Is we want to beat stuff straight away. We want to win, right? So if you're creating stuff where players are not going to win, you need to make it fun. Make it fun. Make it enjoyable. Make conquering the challenge good, but make not being able to beat stuff and losing, make that acceptable. Make it palatable. That's a difficult thing. That's a really difficult thing to do. Like, that's not easy. That is not easy. That's not a short-term solution, but it is something to consider. But yeah, those would be a couple of like quick changes they could do. And there's more long-term challenges that are just very tough. And yeah, again, there's a lot they could do with making events in this game more rewarding in terms of the gear sets that you get. Some of the champions that you get as well that could have souls definitely could be give out a lot more. You could give out a lot more essence, right? You could give out a lot more essence. And that's just a positive thing for the game. And people could actually progress, not only here, by the way, but another, like one thing, imagine you went into, like, imagine I go into Live Arena. Yeah, imagine, this is a fun thing to end on. Because just to reiterate how much I hate the Awaken Weakness, like, my Nice is just crushing it. This champion is ridiculous in PvP. He's only 1 star. Imagine I went into Live Arena and it obviously doesn't make sense, but imagine my 1-star Nice versus an enemy 6-star Nice, right? Which is already as stupid as all the mythical stats that they get from the blessing, plus the effect of the blessing. Imagine on top of that, in Live Arena that they said, well, because his Nice is 6-star, he also will take 25% less damage on top of everything, and that Nice will also deal 50% more damage on top of all the stats and on top of the blessing. Go enjoy Live Arena. Imagine how quickly everyone would quit the game. It's like, that's just that is so stupid. But that is how it works for PvE. Why? It's just so bad. So yeah, that's my thought. Watch Plarium now introduce it for Live Arena. Yeah, imagine that. Yeah. You just, if you've got a big soul, you just do 50% more damage. There's already a problem with the speed stat from souls, in my opinion. For 6-star, you get way more speed and a speed meta. Terrible design as well. Anyway, that's the topic I've talked about in other videos. That's it for today. So yes. Is the content too hard? It's like both yes and no. Yes, it's too hard for multiple reasons, as broken down here. But also no, we do need hard content. We do need challenges for later game players, but it's just key that they're fun and that they're actually doable. Fun and doable is really important. And here's lots of reasons why they're not doable. Do as you will, Plarium. Do as you will. There's my thoughts on it. And let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time. Yeah, goodbye.